I brought Clover to the ash fields because the lease said I had to, not because I thought it would go well. The kneeling of first ash happens once a season, before anyone puts a plow to Ilvain ground. Every draft animal on the colony roster gets walked out to the offering stone at dawn, and every one of them kneels, forelegs first, head down, however that animal manages a bow, or the planting is cursed for the year. That's not a metaphor to the Ilvain, it's law. I'd heard about it from the other resettled families before I ever signed the lease, and every one of them said the same thing. Get your animal there early, keep your head down, and let it happen. We'd been on Ilvain ground 8 months by then, long enough to know which of the local grasses would founder a horse and which wouldn't, long enough to have the shape of the seasons mapped out in a notebook I kept by the door, not long enough to stop feeling like a guest who hadn't been told all the house rules. The colony office called it a resettlement. The Ilvain, when they used the word at all, called it a tenancy. Nobody argued the point with them. You don't argue land rights with the people who decide whether your well still works next month. Sailvern met me at the field gate. He was the overseer for our sector, tall the way all Ilvain are tall, joints that bend one notch wrong for a human eye to sit easy with. He looked at Clover for a long moment. 16 hands of Belgian draft mare, dust-colored, patient as a fence post. And then he looked at me. Your animal understands what is required, he said. It wasn't a question. She'll do fine, I said, which wasn't quite an answer either. See that she does. The humans before you brought creatures that would not settle. We do not repeat that mistake twice. I didn't ask what happened the first time. I'd heard enough stories on the ship over to know I didn't want the details confirmed. They lined us up along the ash-colored dirt as the sun came up gray behind 2 moons. Colonists on one side with their oxen and mules, Ilvain handlers on the other with their own bond beasts, 6-legged things with hides like hammered iron. The offering stone sat between us, waist-high, black rock worn smooth in a bowl shape at the center, where generations of Ilvain priests had poured whatever they poured. Ash, that morning, fine and pale, and drifting a little in the wind. The priests came out chanting something low and layered, 3 voices braided together, and the drums started. Not fast, just steady, the kind of rhythm that gets into your chest before you notice it's there. One by one, down the line, the animals knelt. The oxen went down heavy and slow. The mules folded like they'd done it 100 times, because they had. The Ilvain bond beasts dropped to their forelegs in near-perfect unison, like they'd been drilled for it, which I suppose they had. Clover stood there, ears up, watching the priests the way she watches a storm come in, not scared of it, just tracking it. I'd seen that stance in her 100 times back on the farm we left behind. Thunder rolling in over the tree line, the other horses circling their paddock in a panic, and Clover just standing at the fence with her weight settled, deciding the sky wasn't her problem yet. It had never once meant trouble for anyone but the weather. Standing in the ash fields with 300 colonists and an entire priesthood watching, I understood for the first time that it could look like something else entirely to people who'd never fed her a carrot. I felt Sailvern's attention shift onto me like a change in air pressure. "Correct her," he said quietly. I didn't move. Pulling on Clover's lead when she's decided to stand still has never once worked in the 11 years I've owned her, and I wasn't going to start a fight with a 1,600-pound animal in front of an audience that already thought we were unreliable. "She's not being difficult," I said. "She's just not afraid." That was the wrong thing to say, or the right thing, depending on how you look at it after the fact. The drums stopped, the chanting stopped, and in that silence you could hear how big a field actually is. 2 of the Ilvain guards started toward us, spears held low and horizontal, not raised, the posture for handling something that might bolt. I kept my hands loose at my sides and my voice level, and I said, mostly to myself, "Easy, girl," the way I'd say it to her on any other morning, over any other kind of trouble. Clover flicked an ear at me. That was the whole reaction. Then she did the thing that, if you'd asked me an hour earlier, I would have said was the worst possible thing she could do. She stepped forward, past the guards, past Sail Vern, straight up to the offering stone, and lowered her head into the bowl of ash like it was a water trough. Somebody behind me made a sound I can only describe as a held breath let go wrong. She wasn't eating it. She was just doing what a big, calm animal does with anything at nose height that isn't obviously dangerous. She checked it, nosed through it, blew a breath across the surface, the way she blows across her water bucket every morning of her life, scattering ash in a slow gray cloud, and then she lifted her head, unbothered, and looked straight at Sail Vern, like she was waiting for him to get on with whatever came next. Nobody moved for what felt like a very long 3 seconds. Sail Vern walked forward himself, slow, and looked down into the bowl where Clover's breath had cleared a path through the ash to the black stone underneath. Then he looked at her, not at me, at her, for longer than I was comfortable with. "Do you know what this means?" he said, and it took me a second to understand he wasn't asking me. He was asking the mare. "It means she's thirsty," I said, because somebody had to say something, and the truth felt safer than a guess. He didn't laugh. I don't think Ilvain laugh, not the way we mean it, but something in his shoulders came down half an inch. "There is a passage," he said, "in the oldest version of the rite, before it was written for kneeling. A creature that fears nothing at the Godstone does not bow to it, it drinks from it. It is treated, in that oldest text, as kin, not subject." He looked at me then. We stopped teaching that version 300 years ago. It required a creature actually willing to do it. "She's not being brave," I told him, because it felt important that he understood it right. "She just doesn't know there's anything here to be brave about." "Yes," Sail Vern said, "that is precisely the passage." He said something to the priests in Ilvain, quick and clipped, and the drums started again. Different rhythm this time. Higher, almost gentle. And down the line, nobody corrected their animals anymore. The chanting went on for another few minutes, and then it just stopped, the way things stop when everyone's satisfied rather than finished. Nobody explained the new rule to me that morning. I got the short version weeks later, secondhand, from a neighbor whose son works the grain depot. The kneeling of first ash still happens, but the offering stone isn't swept clean after anymore. They leave it, in case something wants to drink. My neighbor thought that was a fine story to tell over a fence. I didn't correct him, though I noticed he told it like Clover had known what she was doing, like there'd been some plan behind it. There hadn't been. That's the part that stuck with me longest, turning it over on quiet evenings after the chores were done. She hadn't performed anything. She'd walked up to a strange bowl on a strange planet, surrounded by people who could have ended her with a word, and the thought of being afraid simply never crossed whatever passes for a horse's mind. 300 years of scripture, and all it had ever been waiting on was an animal too calm to know it was supposed to be impressed. I walked Clover home across the ash fields, while the sun climbed properly into the sky, and she put her head down twice along the way to tear at a patch of scrub grass, entirely unimpressed with her morning. By the time we got back to the fence line, she'd forgotten the whole thing, the way she forgets most things that don't involve food or flies. I hadn't forgotten it. I don't think I ever will. But she was right not to worry. She usually is.